Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Dewi Purnamasari. My student ID 120060012. I'm from class PBI 1A. So, in this video, I will explain about the Victorian period. Well, this period is called the Victorian period because most of it coincided with the reign of Queen Victoria, 1837 to 1901. It was a time of peace during which important social change and rapid economic and technological development took place. These changes were one aspect of the so-called Industrial Revolution. This revolution contains both positive and negative aspects. At initial stage, it is the negative aspects that are more visible. One of the most serious problems is the growing distinction between rich and poor, between employer and worker. The positive aspect of the Industrial Revolution can be seen in the increasing general prosperity. As affluence increased, so does intellectual activity. Natural science discovered new miracles, such as electric power, which were immediately put to human benefit. The most shocking is the research result of Charles Darwin, 1809 to 1882, published under the title The Origin of Species, 1859, which put forward the famous theory of geological evolution. In addition to this advance in the scientific field, education is increasingly effective and widespread also among the lower class. Regarding the general features of the literature of the Victorian period, it should be said first of all that it was an age of prose. It is true that many quality poems were produced, but the problems that existed at the time seemed to be stretched out to encourage prose writing. With the expansion of general education, the greater the number of readers, periodicals such as newspapers and magazines. Also, with the advancement of science, the number of scientific books about nature and all aspects of human life has also increased. Poetry. The characteristic feature of Victorian poetry in general is the first of all the even the lyrical and spontaneous fervor that existed in the age of Romanticism, and the reflection of this spirit by a more serious tone and a tendency towards setting standards both in form and in content. Even the latter then gave rise to a kind of Puritanism known as Victorianism. The loss of lyrical and spontaneous joy made poetry more reflective, questioning and criticizing social, scientific, and religious issues become the subject of poetry. There is no longer a spontaneous or style resulting from a momentary outburst. All elements of expression are considered, such as rhythm, choice of words, and melody, so that in this Victorian period there were advances in poetry writing techniques. The Victorian period is often called the Tennyson period, not only because Alfred Lord Tennyson, 1809 to 1892, was one of the most prominent poets of that period, but because he was most sensitive to the problems facing his time. One example of Tennyson's lyrics is The Princess 1847, which is written in the blank verse and which also touches on a hot issue at the time, namely the emancipation of women. Tennyson was also inseparable from the problems that preoccupied his era, such as the progress of science and the decline in religious beliefs that he felt excited at the time. Tennyson also tried to write rhymes but was considered less successful, such as Maud, 1855. Subsequently, Tennyson wrote very popular short poems such as The Brook, The Church of the Light, Because, The Oak, and Crossing the Bar. Next to Tennyson, Robert Browning, 1812 to 1889, was the most prominent poet of the Victorian period. Between the two figures, there are similarities, namely in the didactic elements contained in their poetry. But if Tennyson had more to say about his era, namely the hopes, thoughts, and anxieties of Victorian society, Browning was an optimist and believed that things would work out in the end. Even in expression, Tennyson was more cautious. This is not surprising since Browning thinks the message he wants to convey is more important than the way it is conveyed. Browning developed the dramatic monologue drama, which is a one-person conversation. Browning's most successful works have been written in this form. For example, his writings compiled in Man on Woman, 1855, and Dramatic Personae, 1864. In his greatest work, He is the Ring and the Book, 1868 to 1869, which is probably the longest poem in English, and is written in a blank verse. Also applies this method. Browning also reads beautiful and easy to understand short lyric poems such as My Star, Evelyn Hope, Meeting at Night, One Word More, Prose Page, By the Phrased, and many more again. Browning's wife, Elizabeth Barrett, 1806 to 1861, was also a poet, even more famous at first than her husband. His poetry contains teachings and voiced moral and social ideals, as was common in literary works of that era. His poem The Cry of the Children, 1841, contains protests against the employment of children as laborers and is warmly welcomed by the community. Casa Guidi Windows, 1851, is what many consider the best of his work and is a combination of poetry and politics. Science, which developed rapidly in this period, caused a conflict in many people, namely the conflict between religion and science, between belief and doubt. This conflict is also expressed in the poetry of Matthew Arnold, 1820 to 1888. As a scholar of classical literature, his poetic style was influenced by classical characteristics, was clear, simple, and controlled, and was more of a talk out rather than an overflowing feeling. Arnold wrote several story poems, including Sohrab and Rostam, 1853, and a number of elegies and lyrics, including Trees and Double Page. Dante Gabriel Rossetti, 1828 to 1882, a painter and poet who is also known as the leader of the so-called pre-Raphaelitist group. This term was originally used by a group of painters who tried to restore the simplicity and honesty of the Middle Age as they saw in the works of Italian painters before Raphael, 1483 to 1520. Dante Gabriel Rossetti and her sister Christina Rossetti, William Morris, and to some extent also Algernon Charles Swinburne tried to apply the painter's ideals to literature. One of his poems is The Blessed Demoiselle, which contains the characteristics of the ideal pre-Raphaelitist. Its symbols has a dreamlike atmosphere and contains many words that denote color or have association with the five senses. Prose. More prose was produced in the Victorian period, also that literature is devoted to a purpose. So, the novel works produced during that period were generally what were called problem novels, and since their aim is to raise the morale of society, they are also called detective novels. Charles Dickens, 1812 to 1870, was the main creator of these types of novels. His childhood took place in an atmosphere of poverty and loneliness. When he reaches adulthood as a gifted actor, he can easily see dramatic possibilities in a wide variety of situations. And also the distinctive features of the people he meets, all of which he recreates in his novels, perhaps with charms necessary to please the reader. The main aim of Dickens' novels is to eradicate imbalance in society by pointing out these deficiencies and arousing the conscience of the people. The way he took it was by causing alternating feelings of sadness and joy. All Charles Dickens novels are useful, easy to read. Here we will mention just a few. Oliver Twist, 1837, Nicholas Nickleby, 1838, A Christmas Carol, 1843, David Copperfield, 1849, A Tale of Two Cities, 1859, and Great Expectations, 1860. At the same time as Dickens, there is a famous novelist who is usually equated with him. Is William Makepeace Thackeray, 1811 to 1863. Between the two Victorian novelists, there are several notable differences. Dickens came from a poor and miserable family, did not have the chance to get a proper education. On the other hand, Thackeray was self-sufficient and educated in the best schools and even studied at Cambridge University. Dickens is romantic and emotional and interprets this world primarily through his imagination, whereas Thackeray is a realist and moralist who bases judgment solely on observation and reflection. Thackeray's works are in the form of satire, but his best known work is not satire, but a historical novel entitled Henry Esmond, 1852. Thackeray is also famous Vanity Fair, 1847 to 1848, which expresses the writer's views on the surrounding society and his hatred of falsehood. Some of Thackeray's other novels are Pendidikan, 1849 to 1850, The Newcomes, 1855, and The Virginians, 1859. Marianne Evans, 1819 to 1880, are better known by her pseudonym George Eliot. The general character of her novels is what she herself calls psychological realism. What is meant by this term is the expression of the soul's struggle, namely the motives, emotions, and hereditary influence that controls actions. The works of George Eliot with the most readership are Adam Bede, 1859, Camille on the Floss, 1860, and Silas Marmor, 1861. These three novels are about life in rural areas in England and of course also contains psychological analysis and moral discussion. As previously explained, one more characteristic that is felt in George Eliot's novels is the mood of gloom, which is seen for example in the spiritual loneliness suffered by Major, the main character of the novel, The Man on the Cross. Dickens, Thackeray, and George Eliot are considered the greatest novelists of the Victorian period due to the quality, quantity, characteristic, and influence of their works both on society and on other readers. This period produced far more novelists than any of the preceding periods. and most of their works so little or much influence on the three novelists listed above. For example, Charles read 1814 to 1884 in his works, among others, A Terrible Temptation, 1871. In contrast to the cloudiness that surrounds Thomas Hardy's novels, we find in the bright and refreshing air of Robert Louis Stevenson's work, but let us consider this author in the context of the situation of the audience towards the end of the Victorian period. Now, value in work of fiction. Stevenson is one of the first writers who realized that the publisher of this chance without expecting success. He has included a romance of his essay entitled Treasure Island into a periodical for children, then a publisher who dared to take the risk of publishing the story in one volume in 1883. It turned out that this publication immediately achieved success and was very popular with new readers, with the emergence of a short novel. A short story soon appeared which was already known in America. Stevenson then wrote various romance and other mystery stories, namely The New Arabian Nights 1882, Kidnapped 1886, The Black Arrow 1888, and The Master of Ballantrae 1889. The following are some of the names of writers towards the end of the last century who are very popular until now, namely Reader Haggard, Mr. Humphrey, Bert Helkine, Mary Corelli, and Edgar Wallace. The Victorian period was not only very productive in works on fiction, but also in the non-fiction works of several thousand authors. Here we will mention only a few, which really means that its contents we first called Charles Darwin 1809 to 1892 with his work, which most notably The Origin of Species 1959 and The Diction of Man 1871, which put forward the theory of biological evolution and conception of the origin of man that challenged orthodox religious teachings and popular opinion, like with the works of another natural scientist, the Macaulay, is well known in literature for his essay of literary figures such as essay on Milton and essays on Bryan, as well as his major work History of England 1848 to 1861. Thomas Carlyle, who was serious and often angry, wrote his story, but for him story was only one method to convey his teachings. He spoke to his time through a series of works including Sarkar Resorts 1833 to 1834, The French Revolution 1837 on Heroes and Hero Worship 1841, and Post and Prison 1843. He also wrote a number of essays on British and German literary figures such as Burns, Scott, novelists, and Goethe. Thomas Carlyle, born 4 December 1795, died 5 February 1881. At the age of 85, was a Scottish satiric writer, essayist, historian, and Victorian teacher. He taught economics oblique sections, wrote articles for the Edinburgh Encyclopedia, and was a controversial social commentator. He came from a strict Calvinist family and was originally expected to follow in his parents' footsteps and become a pastor. But while attending Edinburgh University, he stopped being a believer. Even so, he still maintained the values of Calvinism until the end of his life. The combination of this religious temperament with the loss of faith in traditional Christianity made Carlyle's work attractive to people in Victorian times who were struggling with political and scientific stance that threatened their traditional social hierarchy. As in the Romantic period, in the Victorian period there was no regionalism in drama writing because of the same reason, especially the lack of appreciation for the drama of the middle class, which at that time dominated British society in the 1860s. There was little change in this situation because of Queen Victoria. Incidentally, better interested in this branch of art. The Queen's face is certainly emulated by the popular playwright society at that time. Thomas William Robertson, 1809 to 1871, he first became famous because of his play entitled David Carrick, 1864, which was based on one of his novels. This drama showed elements of a realism element and very popular in 1867. Yes, he published his main work, which is Cast, which although it feels less subtle when read, it is quite successful when performed. Well, that was the explanation I gave about the Victorian period. I think that's all for, and let's please forgive that's all. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.